Hello everyone, welcome back to Melanie's Journals. Today I'm actually going to do a tutorial video on how I make some of my art pieces for my journal. My journal this year is all about Tolkien, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And so I'm just been painting all different kinds of scenes that we visit during the trilogy. I'm kind of going through a chronological order, so starting with The Hobbit, the different cities and places that we visit there first, and then going along with the Lord of the Rings cities and places. And one of the scenes that I want to put into my journal, because I just love it so much, is the lighting of the beacons. And this happens in the third movie of Lord of the Rings trilogy, which is The Return of the King. And it's when Pippin and Gandalf, they light the beacons from Gondor to Rohan, lighting the beacons, giving a signal that they need help. It's a wonderful scene, almost quite emotional actually, and I just really wanted to put it in between my months of August and September, which are Rohan and Gondor respectively, just to kind of create this this place in between them. I just thought that would be really cool. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm really going to take my time and show you my whole process, so from sketching to painting. So you haven't seen anything like that before. Usually I sketch off camera just because it takes a lot of time. I really get into things, and it generally is just a lot better just to show you once everything is inked in. It saves me a lot of time, but I wanted to show it to you today. And what I've done first, as I always do, I always get some reference pictures of the scene I want to draw. Sometimes I'll put a few scenes together just to make it either easier for myself or because I like different elements. So that's what I'm going to do today. So I have my laptop beside me with some of the images, but I'm just going to show you my sketching process. So what's interesting in this scene is that we are going through a mountain range where these beacons are lit. So they're basically big piles of wood that are lit up once they see another lit. It's kind of like the Great Wall of China, where they also would light fires just to warn the rest of the battalion or the soldiers on them that there was danger. And I'm sure it's been used in other places as well. It's quite an effective and very old means of communication between different people. But yeah, so that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to draw the mountain range, kind of create a bit of depth so you can really see the different beacons. They're always also quite dramatic landscapes, as New Zealand, where these movies are made, definitely is. So I'm also going to try and get the most aesthetically pleasing mountains that I possibly can. So let's go and I'll show you my thought process. So for the mountain range, I really want to have one of the beacons really close by, so you can really see the beacon itself, seeing it being lit, and then going into depth and showing the journey that it's going to take. So this is just part of one of the scenes that they show in the movies. It goes quite quickly, so I really had to like screenshot which scenes I like best. And I think I'm still gonna probably change a few things just to get it more how I wanted it. And as you can see, I've created a middle line. This is where I always cut my drawings so I can put them into my journal. I like having this type of just for myself, just to see that I balance both as well as I possibly can, because I don't really want to have a very unbalanced page unless that's like part of the part of what makes the scene special. Now usually, especially when I'm making like nature scenes, I try to keep it as loose as possible because I know it makes it a bit more natural. So generally for these more nature sketches, everything's going to come together once you start painting it. It's not always going to look as nice while sketching, but it's just about getting the general shapes, and then later on you can go in and create the shadows. So what's really fun in these movies is that when they do this scene, you're actually always gonna try and see like where the next beacon is going to be lit, because that's not always very obvious. They really create the shots that you know, you can see the next one going into the distance. That's always really fun. I'm always trying to, even though I've seen these movies so many times, always try to predict like, okay, where is the next beacon going to be? So as you can see, this is going to be the first one here, then here's going to be the next one, and then here in the far right is going to be the last one that we see. So yeah, this is the sketch. So it's quite simple, quite a few lines. I'm sure it's quite difficult just to see exactly how this is going to turn out. But it's just a sketch, the first part. And usually my sketches are actually quite quick, because I can always add in some details later. It depends though. I mean, if I have a really detailed piece, like for example the coronation of Aragon that I recently made, yeah, of course that's going to take a lot more sketching, because there's a lot more detail in the initial sketch that has to be there. But for this one, it's just a mountain range, so I'm trying to keep it as natural as possible and do it as quick as I can, because I find it just makes it look a bit more real. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed seeing this process. Now we're going to go on to inking it. So to ink it, I always use my Pigma Microns. I'm going to use a 03. I don't really have a preference necessarily. I like the thinner tip ones, but also just depends. I use the very thin ones a lot, so they don't always have the right amount of ink that I want. But this one's going to be fine, because I do want a bit of the bold lines for this painting. And again here, I kind of like the sketching itself. I don't go over it fully, because again, I want to keep that kind of natural feel, and also because later on when I paint it in, it just looks nicer when you don't have very solid and thick lines, because it doesn't really look natural anymore. So just kind of lightly press my nib. So I do get the shape, but you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. As you can see, I'm not actually doing the fire, because generally I just want that to be as clear as possible when I paint it. So this is just for me, just to have the general idea, and then I will erase all my pencil lines later, so you'll probably not really see anything apart from like very basic shapes. But I find again that just leaves it a bit more natural looking, and you can change a bit more once you paint everything in, rather than having very thick and solid lines. So there we go. Again, very simple. This is probably a very simple tutorial to do when I have my like for example the Gondor city. Of course that took a lot more time, especially actually drawing in the city, so the very small details, those take a lot of time. But having these big landscapes, they're generally quite quick and easy in this part of the painting. Generally they do take a lot more time once you start painting, because you have to really get in there with the details going over and over, but you'll see that in just a moment. So I'm going to start coloring it in, and this is where I'm actually combining a few more paintings together, because I really actually I didn't really like the coloring for this one as much. It was very blue and it looked gorgeous, but I did want to have a bit more of a sunrise effect. So I'm using another image of the colors that they use, and then just interpreting that in the other image. So this is a little bit of a guesswork, just to see, okay, where are these colors going to be? And I just really love the purplish vibe that the sunrise has going on, so I'm going to use that rather than a more of a blue tinge. And I don't want to make it too light because I also want the flames to really pop. So I always find this part of the process the more fun part. And I always work in many layers, so I will always start with more of a base layer, just where I want the general color to go. This is also when I tend to do the sky, just because it really, I don't know, having a sky color really helps to for me to understand like how dark the other colors are going to be and what tones I'm going to need. Not always, but I think most of the time. And it also generally just helps me just really get into the painting. So I would never really start with like something difficult like a face or something, or I don't know, something very important in the image. I try to just wanting just a little bit of time with the painting, with the paint, just to get into the groove basically, and then I can go into the more difficult details. And I find that the sky or the background is generally a nice part because, of course, it's in the background. So even if you make a mistake or it might not be as, I don't know, doesn't really turn out the way you want it to, it doesn't really matter because it's not the main focal point of the image. Now, I use gouache paints, but I do tend to be a bit more, use it as a bit more of a watercolor. Why don't I use watercolor? That might be a question. I enjoy using gouache because it has a bit more of a variety of ways that you can use colors. So with watercolor, you really always work from light to dark. And once you've made it dark, it's very difficult to get it lighter if that's what you need. Whereas gouache is a lot more forgiving and you can really go both ways. So you can start very light and go darker, but you can also go dark and then go lighter if that's what you need. So I find the medium a bit more forgiving. The paints are a little bit more opaque, even though I do use quite a bit of water, but that's my own technique. So that's why I prefer gouache to watercolor, but I do like the feel of watercolors. So here we have the main sky. I'm gonna let it dry for a bit. I might make this part right here a bit lower. So I'm gonna kind of get all my colors a bit more down, but I have to do that on a different layer because otherwise I'm going to just change a bit too much. So yeah, I hope you could see how I really work just layer upon layer and as gradually as I can, just to create the overall smooth effect that I want. And as you also can see, of course the paint, it dries, and with gouache and with watercolor it always dries up a lot lighter than you initially expect. So that's why for me especially, like having very dark images is quite difficult because I have to go over it a lot of times to really create that dark pigment. But you'll see that a bit more once I go and do the mountains. But I'm going to let this dry first and then I'm going to show you the mountains. Okay, so the sky has been drying and I'm gonna go on to the mountain range now. I'm not the best at mountain ranges, but so this is good practice for me. What I am going to just, I know, give some tips is that when working with mountain ranges or things that are like landscapes, generally stuff that is in the foreground, so this part over here is going to be darker, and the further back you go the lighter it's going to be. That's going to help with adding the depth into the picture. I want to have a bit more of a purplish hue here, and so for me this part over here is going to probably be one of the lighter parts, but there's also going to be snow on the mountains. So what I'm going to do first is actually just make a very quick outline with some of my purple colors. I'm going to go over this again later, but this is just going to give me just a bit of a guidance as to where I want some of the snow to be, how light I want things to be, and then having this space, that's where we're going to go on and work with. So this is definitely nothing final at all, but just to help guide us with the rest of the painting. So just some purple tones. And leaving quite a bit of white for the snow. And usually with mountain ranges as well, there's a bit of a mist at the bottom. So again, I'm going to keep this lighter as well. So I will go in with the purple, but it's going to be a bit more of a smoky haze later on once we work in all our details. I'm also using the reference pictures just to see where some of the grooves are, and generally those are some lighter parts, and then the opposite side is going to be dark. As you can see, I'm using more purple here on this part to make it a bit more vibrant. That's also because it is going to be a bit darker as well, or a lot darker actually. But I do want to keep that purple tinge, so that's why I'm just filling it in with purple. So I will have that color in there too. And it's already, as you can probably tell, already creating some depth. So I'm going to start with extra detail. I'm going to add more blue. I'm going to first do the front part just so I can get the depth and the darkness that I want. Now I will in the end go in with some gray and some darker black tones, but I just want to keep going in with the colors, because I do want to make it more vibrant than it actually is. Just to experiment a little bit. Maybe it's going to turn out a bit more fantasyful than I had initially anticipated, but I'm enjoying this so far. And so I'm using my reference picture just to kind of get where some of the ridges are, some of the stones are, just light and dark, and you know, work that in. I'm not, it probably won't be as, you know, detailed. I'm not going to paint every single rock on there, but just with the light and dark, I think you can create quite a bit of depth anyway. Just the illusion of, yeah, of the terrain. Okay, I'm gonna go in with some gray and black. And as you can see, I've switched into a smaller brush because these are smaller details, and then I want to create a bit of a different texture. As you can see, I've been working with some just quick small strokes. And that way I have most control over my brush and over where the paint goes. It's still a little bit wet, as you can see, but that's all right. So the foreground, I'm going to leave it for now. I'm going to start with some of the background. I'm going to start here because this part is closer, and then go sweep up that way. I'm going to use the similar colors. I am going to probably keep my smaller brush for the rest of the details, just because I can keep it a little bit lighter and just a bit more specific, because I think the farther away you go, the more the smaller details just helps it a bit more. The front part has to be a bit more detailed than the rest, so I hope that makes sense. And as you can see here, I did a lot of details just going horizontally, just to get those rock effects. But for the rest, it's all basically downward slopes. Or if it's just a bit more of a, yeah, it just goes a bit more down to create that effect from the mountains. Keep clear of these parts, as I'm going to do with this, just to keep this as light as I possibly can, as well as some of the snow. I might actually go over some of the snow with some more purplish tones to not make the contrast too great, because if you look at the images, the white is never really white and it always has a different color. But I mean, it's just, that's why I'm going quite slow with this painting. It's just experimenting, like what do I like more? Do I need some more contrast somewhere? And just slowly adding in the details. And that's what I meant before. I find mountains a bit difficult, or like nature quite difficult, because you know there's no perfect way. Like if I make a very detailed door, for example, then the details are more solid, I guess. So it's a lot easier to create those details very well. Whereas here it's just, you know, going in and just trying to add the details as yeah, until you're basically happy with the final result. Okay, so for now I'm quite happy how this mountain range is turning out. The only detail I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bit of yellow just at the tops of the mountains here, so you can really see the morning light come in. And then I'm going to make the torches. Those are going to be quite, you know, big features of this scene. So once I've done that, I can really evaluate if, you know, some things need maybe a bit more detail, or if I have to darken things up. But I'm quite happy how this is turning out. I think you can really feel, you know, the mountain range going that way. So happy about that. A little bit of detail here. Go. Okay, now for the torches, I'm actually going to start off with brown. You probably won't actually see that in the end, but it's just, again, just a base layer of color, because you can definitely see that it does add, just because it peeks through, it adds some, I know, some depth to it. And usually what I would do with fire or with any light source is to add some light, you know, around it. But what I could see from my reference pictures is that probably just the movie effects, but the fire, it's very very on its own. It doesn't really give off a glow or anything, which is quite cool. It has a really cool effect, but it does mean that, you know, once I shouldn't paint the fire as I would usually do it. So that's why reference pictures are so very important. Okay, so now moving on to the fire, I have another smaller brush. And again, we're going to work with layers. So starting with this bright one, and then add in some of the flame details. And then later on, I'm actually going to add a bit of white details on the mountains with some jelly pen rolls, and then finish everything off with some of my metallic paints. So I'm going to do the same with the fire, so that's why I'm not too worried if they don't stand out or shimmer as much as I want them now, because I know I'm going to go over them later. And maybe you could see, but I've actually darkened only the bottom part. I find they're a bit too big. So probably once I work with my metallic paints, because they're a lot more opaque, I'll probably make this fire just a bit lower to get a bit more proportioned. Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to go in with my white gel pen, and then later on the metallic details. Okay, so I'm using this jelly roll, the 0.5. It's the smallest nib that I have. And I'm only going to go into the lighter bit of snow parts, just to get that detail in that I kind of lost. So with my metallic paints, I'm going to start with a lighter detail, and that's on the edges here with a very, very light gold color, to once again kind of show off the sunrise. I'm not putting it everywhere, but just a few places. And what I love about those metallic paints is it just creates this extra little detail that you don't always see. It really depends on where the light is coming from. But then when you do see it, it just looks great. Now for the fire, I'm going to use a few different colors of metallic paints. So going from dark to light. So, the finished piece, I am very happy how it turned out. I'm going to lift it just a little bit, so hopefully, yeah, you can see a bit of the shimmer over here. And here I added a few very, very light moon and stars. They're very faint, but I really like them and I don't really need to have that much attention, just a little bit. So yeah, very happy how it turned out. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing me making it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut it in half and put it in the journal. And here we have the painting, all done and in my notebook. Very happy how it turned out. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing this bit of a different video, or at least not part of the usual like bullet journal parts. But then as you can see, if I flip it kind of through, here we have Rohan, the beacons, and then we get to Minas Tirith. So really happy with this in between piece. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys would like some more tutorials. And for now, thank you, and I will see you in my next video. Okay, bye bye.